Good afternoon and welcome to the National Urban League's Digital Career Success Series, brought to you by the Urban League Jobs Network. My name is Jody Brockington and I am your host. Many of you in the audience are FOJs, friends of Jody, and hopefully soon will become another FOJ, friends of Jim Stroud, our guest today. Today's topic is the future of work. Where is work going? It seems so difficult to get job applications, job interviews, resumes, LinkedIn profiles, online, offline, networking. Where are we going with work, right? What does the future hold? Why are we working so hard to get something that we might not get? Everyone's trying to work for themselves. No one wants to be an employee. Everyone wants to be a CEO. And some people just want a paycheck. Some people want passion. So today we are speaking about the future of work. Are we going to be doing everything? Will some things be automated? We're talking about virtual reality, AI, automation. Will computers and robots be taking over some of the positions we now hold? What will allow us to really see the future of work and be the future of work? Today's guest is Jim Stroud. He has graced the Digital Career Success Series a few times, especially when we started out. And not only has he been seen with us, you can catch him all over social media. He is a Twitter fiend. He has his own blog and definitely some great content on LinkedIn. He is the head of global sourcing and recruiting strategy at Randstad, SourceRight. And so he is an expert on knowing where the workforce is going, how to place people, how to help you find a job that actually could be dreamy, and also when it might be time to go. He has consulted with companies that many of you want to work for and or with, Google, Microsoft, etc. So make sure you listen in today. And if you have any questions at the end and or throughout, please send them in. We will make sure Jim answers them all and that he hopefully returns again when the future of work becomes now. Jim, thank you so much for joining us. I know that your presentation is going to wow us as always. So thank you.
I appreciate that. I feel like I owe you $20 for the introduction.
Only 20?
Very good. At least $20. At least $20. As I begin, I want to first apologize to those who see me waving on the screen. As you can no doubt see, I have a face for radio. But that notwithstanding, I am going to power through on. So let's start off by saying hello, National Urban League. Thank you for having me. It's my hope that at the end of our presentation, at the end of our time together, that you'll, one, be awake, and two, you'll be encouraged and empowered with information and strategies that you can immediately apply to your job search. Now, when it comes to our time together, I will be discussing what companies are looking for in employees to compete with automation and digital era and so forth. But I also plan on going a bit of the extra mile by sharing a little something I call the greatest career advice in the world, more or less. It'd be nice to have some dramatic music to go along with that, but you know, you get what you get. All right, so before I get into the greatest career advice in the world, I want to do a quick poll. So just for giggles, just sort of indulge me, and I'm going to lean on my helper in the background there. And so what I want to ask you guys is this. Which is the best way to advance your career? Is it to get another college degree or a college degree? Or is it just to learn a new trade? So the poll is going up, and I'm going to ask, Clarissa, if you would assist me in that and let me know what people are saying in the chat window as far as what they think is the best option. Is it college or is it a trade? And as she's populating those scores, you guys are really, you guys are really into it. Okay, cool. All right, so All right, so the results are in, and I see that it's a bit of a split. Interesting, interesting. So about 60% of you guys are saying, Jim, college, that's the way to go. No problem, drop the mic. Interesting. But the remaining 40% are saying, get a trade. Interesting. Let's sort of explore both of those options, okay, and see what you get. Now, for those who chose school, rather college, let me give you something to think about. Okay, now, statistically speaking, the more degrees you have, the higher income you will learn over the course of your lifetime. So by the time you walk across the graduation aisle to the time you die, you would have earned more money. Now on the screen are the average lifetime earnings of people based on degrees. So if you have a professional degree, you're going to make on average $5,600,000, give or take. Now these are averages. Some people will make more, some will make less, but on average, that's what you're expected to make. If you have a bachelor's degree, over time you're going to make probably $2 million by the time you graduate to the time you die. If you are a high school graduate, for that matter, you're only going to make about $1.5 million over the course of your lifetime. So, of course, all that to say, as you see me on the screen attesting, more school, more money. But on the flip side, you got to consider this. Now, since 1999, student debt has increased more than 500%. More than 500%. So, if you, like me, have had to deal with student debt, then you already know this very, very harsh reality. Now, if you're not careful, student debt can haunt you for a very, very long time. Can I get a witness? Yes. Okay. I'm imagining some people chatting me back there saying yes, they can attest to that. Yes, student debt can haunt you for a very, very long time. Now think about this. In fact, did you know that the student loan debt is the second highest consumer debt category? It's true. Just behind buying a house, you got your mortgage loans debt that going on, and after you got your mortgage loans, then you got the student debt, which is higher than credit card debt and auto loans. Now let that sink in. You know, you course of your life, you got your house, your student debt, then you got your car and credit cards. How crazy is that? Now, if you're in your 30s with student loans, you make up the largest percentage of people. Of people who have a student loan debt, because people in their 30s, overall, they share their portion of a $408 billion burden. So, yeah. Now, on the screen, you look at the different states. This comes from the Institute for College Access and Success. Now, what these numbers will tell you are these are the states that have the highest amount of student loan debt on average. If you're looking at this, look at see if your state is on here, and if you're feeling the pain of student loan debt, well, no doubt you can agree with these numbers. All right, now, so those are the people who said college is the way. Now, for those who are saying, hey, Jim, I chose trade, so nah. Those people who chose college. Now, I bet right now you're thinking, yeah, I chose trade, so I'm feeling pretty good. Well, let me give you some things to consider as well. Perhaps you're thinking that you can earn a pretty decent salary as a funeral director, or maybe even 6 figures as an air traffic controller, or maybe some other opportunity where you can learn a new skill. Sure, you might not make as much over a lifetime with someone who has a professional degree, but you will be without the hassle of a student loan debt. You know, so on the screen are some jobs that are pretty high paying or pretty decent, I would say, without a college degree being required. So, all that being said, I want you to consider this. What if I told you that choosing between a college degree or learning a new trade was a trick question? Would you be surprised? Well, the question you should be asking is, it's not whether or not you should go to college. It's not whether or not you should learn a new trade. The real question, the crucial question you should be asking yourself is this: how long before a robot is doing your job? Now, unless you've been living under a rock, I'm sure you've been hearing a lot of, for lack of a better word, noise about robots and artificial intelligence taking over the job market. This option is certainly very attractive to different companies for a variety of reasons. One, if I can just get a robot in place to do the job, I just have to pay for that robot one time. So I don't have to pay additional labor costs, nothing but profit, right? Robots don't steal or cause drama between coworkers. I don't have to worry about hiring illegal workers if I have robots doing the jobs. Robots can get the job done quickly and efficiently and faster than humans. They don't make as many mistakes. And then also what's also attractive to a lot of companies is that, well, robots don't go on strike. So pretty much put a robot in place and it's easy selling for a lot of companies, which is why it is very attractive to a lot of companies that can afford robots. Now if you get a moment after our time together, go to Google and do a search on robots taking over jobs. And you'll find a lot of different articles, sort of like this one, where it says robots take over most jobs within 30 years, experts warn. Or you'll see articles like this, where robots are expected to replace some 5 million jobs by 2020. You'll see articles like this, where this manufacturer, Foxconn, they're the company that makes Apple phones and Samsung phones. They laid off a factory that had 60,000 workers in it. And there are more than one factory out there. So imagine that once a factory starts using robots, a lot of factory workers will pretty much be gone, And then you also have articles like this, Walmart cutting 7,000 jobs due to automation, and it's not alone. Now, when I first read this article, I thought, okay, that's probably those cashiers, because I know in the Walmarts that I go to, I see these lines where you can check yourself out, and it's just one cashier there watching over people to make sure they're not stealing or to assist them or whatever the case may be. So when I first saw this headline article, I thought, okay, this is all those cashier jobs going away. But no, when I read through there, I saw that it wasn't referencing just cashiers, but also professionals like those in the accounting and invoicing sector. So a lot of professionals from Walmart, they're going away thanks to robots and automation. And then when you Google robots taking over jobs, no doubt, you're going to come across articles like this that talk about how the fast food industry are using robots and automation in response to the demand for a $15 minimum wage hike. I was fortunate enough to visit Hong Kong a couple years back, and I saw something like this firsthand. It blew my mind when I first saw it. And keep in mind, this was like 2+ years ago. All right, so I come up on a restaurant, and there's a kiosk outside of the restaurant. I punch a few buttons for the food that I want. I run my credit card through the machine. I get a receipt. I then walk into the restaurant, give somebody my receipt, and then they give me the food. Now, instead of having like 6 or 7 people in the restaurant working there, you only have one person at the cashier and maybe 1 or 2 people in the back. So when I saw that, that blew my mind when I saw it in Hong Kong. But when I started hearing how a lot of fast food companies are automating their processes, it made me realize that in the very near future, I could drive through a fast food place like a Wendy's, press a few buttons, swipe my credit card, drive around and get my food. And that one person or 2 people in the back who are preparing the food, they would get $15 an hour. But everybody else who would have worked in that Wendy's, say 7 people, they would be gone. So I saw that. I was like, wow, this is really, really wild to see a lot of these things come to pass. Now, you might be thinking to yourself, Jim, okay, I'm not worried about all of that because there's not a robot out there that can replace the work that I can do. And if you're thinking that way, you might be surprised to learn that robots can accurately, or rather artificial intelligence, can accurately predict elections. There's this one artificial intelligence called Mog-IA who successfully predicted that Donald Trump would be the president when so many other polls and so many other people said that he didn't have a chance. So that's interesting. You may also find it interesting to know that robots are judging beauty contests. That happened back in 2016. You may be interested to know that robots are writing novels. There was a particular artificial intelligence robot that wrote a short novel, and it almost won a literary prize. It actually came in 3rd runner-up. This happened in Japan. Very, very interesting. You also may be interested to know that robots are being granted citizenship, yes, citizenship, in places like Saudi Arabia and Japan. Uh, in Japan, in this case, here's a tweet referring to this artificial intelligent boy who's been given the rights of a citizen in Tokyo. And you may have also heard about this other artificial intelligence, a robot called Sophia, who also was given citizenship in Saudi Arabia. But not only that, she also wants to have a baby. She wants to start a family. This is a robot. This is an artificial intelligence that is, and this is like happening now. This article, as you see at the top there, is from November 27th, 2017. So robots and artificial intelligence are already doing a lot of amazing things. If you think that your job is safe because you do something different, you better prepare. It's don't want to freak anybody out, but just be aware that your career might not be as safe as you think it is. So what I think your career focus should be as of right this very moment and from now on is how do I plan a career in the midst of a robot invasion? Well, there are 3 strategies that I suggest before taking on questions. All right, so the first one is to know the trends. Know the trends. Now, spend some quality time, I suggest, with the Occupational Outlook Handbook. Your tax dollars paid for it, so put it to use. They have a lot of helpful resources on this site. One of them you'll find is this, the fastest growing occupations data. So this list of the fastest growing occupations for the next decade. So it's basically what it says based on government data, you'll be able to pinpoint a career that will most likely be there for years to come. Now, who's to say a robot might not take away some of this later on, but from government data, they're speculating that these jobs are relatively safe from robots and artificial intelligence taking them away for the next 10 years or so. So with that information, you can know what is the best time investment, right? Because you don't want to be in a position where you spend all this money for a college degree or some other skill, and then 2 years into your job, the robot takes it over, that kind of thing. So keep this in mind. But also keep in mind, too, that when you go here, this is from a national perspective. And so depending on where you live, you may be able to get more localized information. For example, this here. Now, I'm in Atlanta, Georgia, the Hot Atlanta, whatever you want to call it. So I'm in Atlanta, and here we have the Georgia Department of Labor, and they have data on the fastest growing occupations down to the county level. So let's say I want to get a job in my county, but I don't want to drive too far away or whatever. So I can go here to this site that my tax dollars to pay for, and I can look at the data on the jobs that are disappearing, you know. So if I do a search for the fastest growing occupations where the green arrow is pointing to, or and I can see, okay, these are jobs that I want to focus on, but let me also look at the most declining occupations where the orange arrow is, so I can see what jobs are listed there in case I have an interest in one of the jobs listed there. And if I do have a job that's listed there, I'm going to highly suggest that you develop a new skill set or new interest. Because if the job or career that you have, at least in this scenario, being in Atlanta, if I have interest in one of these jobs, the most declining occupations, then that would be a waste of my time investment because those jobs are going away. Okay, that was a mouthful. Now, you know, even if I say this about jobs going away and looking at data at different jobs going away, I can feel in the back of my mind, my spidey sense, it starts to tingle, and I feel resistance from somebody. I feel resistance from a lot of people. So in case I'm talking to you, you're saying, Jim, I'm resistant to getting a new career because I've been doing this my whole life and I don't want to learn something new. Let me give you a bonus tip, all right? And this bonus tip is for people, again, if the idea of learning new things intimidates you, right? Then I suggest you also go to this site, again, paid for by your tax dollar, is ONET Online. ONET Online, the address on the bottom of the screen, onetonline.org. So what can you do with this? Well, where the orange arrow is pointing to, you put in your job title of what you do, and then you hit the enter button, and you will get results like this. Now, this, what ONET is doing is giving you a list of other jobs that require most, if not all, of the same skill set. So, for example, I put in the search on the word recruiter. So someone who's a recruiter has a similar skill set to a salesperson or a logistics manager or an advertising promotions manager, to name a few. Okay, maybe, just maybe, as I go through this list, I could be qualified to do jobs that I never considered in the past before, you know? So if you are a recruiter or whatever, fill in the blank, whatever your job title is, go over to ONET Online, put in your job title, and see what other jobs could appear to suggest that you check out, because there may be jobs that you can do that you don't even know you can do by virtue of the different skill sets that are required for those different jobs. Okay? All right. Now, back to what I was saying, which was what? Yeah. When planning a career in the midst of a robot invasion, you should know the trends. And one good website for this is this one, which is actually on the NPR site in the Planet Money section. So in that section, the address there on the screen, it says, will your job be done by a machine? And it's a pretty cool site. It's pretty simple. All you got to do is find your occupation on this list, and the website will give you an estimate of how likely a robot will be taking their job away, taking away your paycheck, rather. Now, in this example, if you happen to be a bookkeeper, things are not looking up too bright for you, just as an example, but it's good to know in advance these type of things. Also, what you can do too, because it has a lot of jobs on this site, but not every job, something you can do too is to go to Google and do a search on something along these lines. Do robots versus lawyers, or robots versus whatever your job title is, or whatever your field is, and you'll see, you know, different results like this. But simply just change the word lawyers to whatever your job title is, and you'll be amazed by the results and how quickly technology is evolving in your industry. All right, so that was the first one. The second of three is the second thing to do when planning a career in the midst of a robot invasion is to mimic successful people. What do I mean by that? Well, research people on LinkedIn to find people with the job you want. Let's say you want to be the next Bill Gates, right? So what you could do is look at his LinkedIn profile and review their career history. And then you look at what they did from the time they graduated school to the present. And then you sort of copy their career path as best you can. You know, you'll say, okay, Bill left college and he got a job at Burger King after he got out of school. So, okay, I'm just getting out of school, so let me go get a job at Burger King because I think that will help me along my pathway, because that's what Bill Gates did. Just an example. Burger King might have been the best example for a technology career, but, you know, regardless. Hopefully you get the idea of that. All right, so then what you can do too is you can look at where they are or where they were in their career, where it matches up with what you're doing right now. And you say, okay, when Bill Gates was at the same level I am right now in his career, these are the things that he was doing. All right, so let me figure out different projects I can do on my job if I'm currently working so that I can match the type of things that Bill Gates did when he was at this stage in his career. And then, moreover, let me look at somebody who is one level above me that is doing and what they're doing. So let me look at how they describe what they're doing on their job, who is one level above me, and let me see what I can do in my present day job to match what they're doing, so that by the time I'm chosen or considered for a potential promotion or a recruiter sees my profile, they say, hey, this person's already doing the job at the next level. Let me go ahead and recruit them. Hopefully that makes sense. All right, so then a third thing you should do when planning a career in the midst of a robot invasion is to target companies worth your time. More often than not. Did I say more often than not? I'll say it one more time. More often than not, when people are looking for work, they are in survival mode and open to whatever they find and whoever is closest to matching their salary requirement. And to that, I say, I understand that. I get it. I've been laid off during times of recession before, so I've been there and I've done that. However, if you're in a position where you are already working and you can take your time, please consider these matters. Look at different companies and ask yourself these questions. How has their stock performed? Because if the company is doing good overall, if so, good, they'll be around, and If they're healthy, they can possibly give you a raise later. You know, what do their press releases say? Do they have press releases? A company that has something to brag about is growing and therefore worth your time. What are people saying on Glassdoor? Is it possible that the culture of that company is toxic and you wouldn't be happy there? Companies with low ratings from people who work there are not worth your time, let me tell you. Have they won any industry awards? You know, because that's important to know, because award-winning companies can teach you things and therefore elevate your skill set, right? Who do they compete with? That's very important. Consider this: if I work for AT&T, simply because I work for AT&T, I automatically look good to Sprint and Verizon, because Sprint and Verizon compete with AT&T. So if you get with a company that has a lot of competitors, it's almost like an insurance plan, you know, because if I'm doing whatever for AT&T, if I go to Sprint for a job, they're going to say, oh, you work at AT&T? Oh, well, you must be pretty good. It's one of our competitors. So they're going to give me a bit more attention. Do they have a corporate alumni group? That's important to know, because if a company has a corporate alumni group, that means that they value their people, and then they want to rehire them on down the road. So if they want to rehire old employees, former employees, then, you know, they treat their people pretty well, you know. And then also, does the company have a good reputation? An employer brand is very, very crucial, I think, for your career development, because it reflects on you. Like, for example, if you work at Google, if you're a software engineer at Google, the general thought is that you're a really good software engineer. You might not be. You might be terrible. But simply because you work at Google, and Google is so highly respected for technology, then people are going to automatically assume that, well, you worked at Google, so you must be smart, right? Hopefully that makes sense. Now, I'm going to open this up to questions and answers, but before I do, I want to share a couple of things that may be interesting to you. Now, I went pretty fast because I want to make sure I have plenty of time to ramble on with you guys. So what I did was I made it simple. If you would jot down this web address, www.bit.ly/NULjobs18, you'll get all the notes that are relevant to this presentation. But not only that, you'll also get a bunch of new stuff that I did not mention here because of time, but I wanted to be helpful to you. So it's about 5 pages of notes. Of course, we'll also include links to the articles and stuff that I shared. So if you were like, hey, that article looks interesting, what about robots doing this and that kind of thing? Not to worry, all that is in the notes. So just jot this down, download it, and you'll be good to go. If you know somebody else in your network who may be looking for a job and it could use this kind of assistance, go ahead and share it. It's all good. It's there to help. So that's what that's for. Also, quick plug for my book. I have a book out called The #1 Job Hunting Book in the World. I'm very happy to say that my mom says it's the best job search book she's ever read. So I have at least that one endorsement. If you like the kind of stuff I've talked about in this presentation and you want more of the same, by all means, get the book available on Amazon. There's also a link to it in the notes as well. So I'm going to open it up to Q&A. But in the meantime, in case you have to drop off or dip or whatever the case may be, feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn. My LinkedIn address is on the screen. Catch me on Twitter. Catch me on my blog. So all that to say, I'm going to go into Q&A. I'm going to put back on the screen, though, before I do, the link to where you can download all the notes, which has information on everything, but plus a whole lot more. So all that being said, I'll take a quick moment to breathe and answer any questions.
Jim, there are so many questions and such great information as always. The first question is, you know, how do you kind of navigate? You gave such great resources to go to find out information, but, you know, how do you know if you know your job is potentially going to be replaced in X number of years by some robots, how do you now start strategizing either to make a shift or, you know, I'll say get ahead of the robots, to get ahead of automation? Does it depend on the industry? Does it depend on where you are in your career? Like if you're mid-career versus beginning versus end, kind of an overall, because it kind of came from multiple people at different stages in their career.
Sure, it's an interesting situation. Of course, the resources that I already mentioned about the government resources that show you what jobs are fading away and which ones are building. But in addition to that, there are some skill sets that will be valuable regardless of how technology change.
Okay.
Skill sets like problem solving, communication, skill sets like emotional intelligence. That's a very big one, believe it or not. If you were to do a search on millennials losing their interpersonal skills, you'll see a lot of research and articles about how millennials are so into looking at cell phones and iPads, and they're losing the ability to look someone in the eye and talk to them. That is a very, very important skill that I think people in my generation, Generation X, take for granted, but that millennials don't really appreciate as well as someone in my generation or baby boomers. So that's a skill set that's really interesting. Actually, I have on my blog, jimstroud.com. If you go on my blog and do a search for this article I wrote called "Would You Hire a Social Justice Warrior?" you'll see in that article a list of intangible skills that companies will need now and will continue to need in the future. Because even though there's new technology coming out, there will be a shortage of people that can do these new technologies because they're so new. So what companies are going to need more than anything else is they're going to need people who can figure out problems, who can resolve issues, who can communicate, things like that. So yeah, and actually, as a quick tangent, to find people that way, to find people who can solve problems, you're going to see more companies do more things like online assessments, right? Let me go on continue my tangent here. All right, so there's a company called Unilever, which people here may have heard of, I'm sure. All right, they've used a tool similar. They use a tool called Pymetrics. Either it's Pymetrics or a tool similar to that. And I know Pymetrics because that's a tool that we at Randstad SourceRight have invested in. So what Pymetrics does is it's a series of online games. And when you play these games, you're actually being tracked and measured for certain skills. So this is how it works in the scenario with Unilever. All right, so Unilever posts an ad on Facebook or someplace saying, "Hey, we got a job for you. Check it out." You click the link, but instead of going to a job description, you go to the Pymetrics site where you can play these online games. There are about 6 different online games. It takes about 5 minutes or so to play each one. You play these games, and as you play the games, the system says, "Oh, this person is good at making decisions. Oh, this person is patient. Oh, this person can resolve issues. Oh, this person can do whatever," right? So it's analyzing you as you're playing these games, your competency for a certain skill set, right? So then the hiring manager will say, "Okay, we've had 200 people play these games because they were looking for a job. Show me the people who scored the highest on this game." And I'll say, "Okay, so we have 20 people here who scored the highest. Okay, good. Let's invite these 20 people to come talk to me or a recruiter here at the company." The people come, they talk to the hiring manager, and then after they pass the interview, they get offered a job. And they'll at that point, the hiring manager will look at the resume. So by the time they're actually meeting with a hiring manager or recruiter, the hiring manager or recruiter already knows you have the basic skills to do the job because you score so highly on this test. Now, Unilever used that process to hire 450 people in the year last year. Okay. Yeah, between mid 2016 to 2017, they hired 450 people that way. Now looking at resumes first, can you pass the test? You passed the test online, you played the game, you got the skills, so now we're going to just talk to you. So not only Unilever, Goldman Sachs, Walmart, Jet.com, they all use a similar process to make a bunch of hires. So, yeah, that was a long-winded response. Hopefully I answered that question.
So, but in that same vein, even if you,
Yeah.
speaking of these few companies that you brought up, are there companies that are now planning ahead, knowing that the brand value, training, the cost of training new employees is a lot more costly than bringing one in? Are they looking at their workforces now and trying to help those with transferable skills instead of going to one of the sites you gave us to figure out if I'm a lawyer, I could also negotiate, I can also this. Are they doing that to keep their employee base, or are they using it to weed them out?
I think they're using, I've seen a bit of both, but I've seen more of it to keep people in. You know, it's sort of ironic. It's sort of a weird, it's a weird trend I'm seeing too among some companies, especially on multinational companies, where people are retiring for, you know, for whatever reason, and then they're being hired back as consultants because when they leave the company, they have all this knowledge that's walking out the door with them, and then a lot of the people that are new of a younger generation, they may have the skills and aptitude, but they don't have the knowledge. So companies are like, you know, people are retiring, and then as soon as they're gone, they say, well, they're gone, but we still need to know how to do this. So they end up hiring them back as consultants, which is kind of funny. But I'm seeing a lot of that. I'm
And
also
then,
seeing a lot of, yeah, go ahead.
yeah, no, go ahead.
No. I'm also seeing a lot of companies too place a lot of emphasis on training as well,
Okay.
for sure. I think a lot of candidates have the upper hand in terms of that. If anyone is listening, do a search on the term talent scarcity, and you see how a lot of companies are really scrambling to either train the people they have on all this new stuff so they can keep them because it's cheaper to keep her than it is to hire someone. You know, so look up the
No, so
term talent
looking at
scarcity.
that,
You see a lot of.
especially from where you work at Randstad, who often will do some staffing and, help complete organization change, you know, AI has kind of been around depending on how old you are, from the first fax machine to now with some of the first robots. So how do you work in spaces where technology is taking over parts of your job, maybe not all of it? There are some pros and clearly some cons. What are some of the pros people want to know of, the whole robotic AI stuff if it does come face to face with you?
The more you know, the better you are, the more valuable you are as an employee. If robots and AI new processes come into the office, instead of being intimidated, learn it as much as you can so you can take that skill set somewhere else. I think what a lot of people are doing is that they are intimidated by it, they fear it, and so they just try to slow it down as much as they can. They would be better off to learn as much as possible so they can take it with them to their next opportunity.
And you brought up a very interesting fact, and our very next DCSS is actually about exennials and millennials. But do you believe that maybe this whole AI and robots could actually help bridge some of these generational ties at work or angst at work that we hear about, see played out, or often play in, where there could be some bridging of ties based on some of the work that gets automated? Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think so. I think that you ever seen this movie called The Intern with Robert De Niro?
Love it. Love it.
Yeah. I actually have not seen it. I've seen clips of it because everyone always brings it to my attention when I see it. So next time I'm on a plane, I'm trying to look it up and look at it.
That's what I was going to say. I saw it on the plane.
Yeah. But my thinking is that the workforce is changing so much that these different groups will be banded together, generations banded together, and they'll have to learn to work together because it'll be a necessity for companies to have these different generations working there. Something else that I think people are not really realizing, but I'm realizing because I'm seeing it because I talk to different companies, is that this thing called the silver tsunami. Have you heard that term before, the silver tsunami?
Mm-hmm.
Well, for those who have not heard of the silver tsunami, it means that there are a lot of people of retirement age retiring at the same time, which is going to cause a lot of issues for companies, which is what I mentioned earlier about people are retiring, but then they hire them back as consultants. One other thing too that I'm noticing in relation to the super tsunami, which is also interesting, is something called the super age nations, which means that those super age nations are countries where 20% of their population is over 65. Now by 2020, not 2020, yeah, 2021, somewhere in there, we're going to reach a point where 1/5 of the world population would be over 65 and also younger than 5. I think it is, younger than 10. So it's going to be like a wide gap in the workforce, I think. So you're going to see a lot of people who are older people, older generation in the workforce, and you're going to see a lot of much younger in the workforce, and they're going to have to learn to work together. And I think that they will out of necessity. I think I answered that question right. I think I rambled that a little bit. Did I answer that question?
Well, it's just the idea of, different people align themselves with different parts of technology. Even, I'm an Xer, but at the same time, I think of myself as someone who's pretty adaptable, but there's certain skills or things that I don't want to particularly train myself in. I don't want an HTML. I don't care about the back end. I'm definitely a front end user, but understand how it works, right? The mechanics. I don't want to be the engineer. But at one point or another, even those who are in engineering or the high paying jobs where, they might be the ones tweaking and creating the robots, that constantly changes too. So how does that workforce continue to grow when we keep hearing the numbers, especially with communities of color, women, et cetera, who are the majority of the workforce, but not the most in those roles and in those positions? So how is this going to pan out futuristically speak?
Oh, yeah. I got a few predictions around that. Robots can do a lot of wonderful and amazing things, but robots can't vote. So when it starts to happen where a lot of people start losing their job at one time, there will be a societal uproar, and I'm sure politicians will be incentivized to find ways to deal with that issue. So that's one. Something else, I had another thought too. Gosh, what another thought? Another decree. Yeah. So there are some companies who realize that a lot of technology is changing, and there won't be enough people around to work these new technologies because it's just so new. So I'm starting to see things out there that used to be sci-fi, but it's not science fiction anymore. There's a company out there called Daqri, which is D-A-Q-R-I, and they develop smart helmets. And these smart helmets remind me of the Matrix. It is so amazing. So what happens is you put on these helmets, and then you look through a visor, and then everything you need to know to do a job is being right in front of your face, like an augmented reality kind of a thing. Have you ever seen Pokemon Go and how you look and you like a little cartoon character there, but it's not really there? So demonstrations I've seen of this technology is that like someone is walking through some kind of warehouse facility, and they look up and they see a pipe or something and a valve. The helmet will flash in front of you with little arrows and graphics that says, is the arrow in the red? If so, then move the switch to the right. If it's blue, move it to the left. Take 3 steps to the right and then push this button here that's green. Things like that. So even if I didn't have no idea whatsoever how to maneuver through a warehouse or some other kind of manufacturing setting, as long as I can put on that helmet and can read, it can walk me through everything I need to do for that job. I see different technologies like that coming more and more into play as this new stuff comes up. So I see a lot of things like that. Yeah.
And then specifically for women and people of color, how is this whole robotic tide and change going to impact those who are already kind of, feeling the heat, I'll say, in the workforce?
Sure. Knowledge is power. No matter what demographic they are, knowledge is power. I mentioned the government resources, but in addition to that, you can do things like go to YouTube and find there's a conference for every industry. So whatever industry you're in, say medical, just do a search on medical conference and listen to speakers for free on YouTube who are talking about the future and what's going on right then and there. You can also do a search on different podcasts. So find podcasts in your industry and listen to what's going on. Maybe reach out to the person who produces the podcast or whoever is the host of the podcast and ask their opinion as well. I think also what one could do is to position themselves to be found, be an expert. There are a couple ways you can do that. One is if you had let's say you're in I'll say with healthcare because I'm working on something with that. So let's say in the healthcare industry, I created a podcast, about, I don't know, how to do something in healthcare, right? So people who will listen to my podcast will be people who have an interest in the healthcare industry, but also there would be people who will be influential in the healthcare industry. And if they listen to my podcast on a regular basis and they're listening to me talk about healthcare for so long, then they would think of me as an expert. Sort of like maybe think about how Oprah started her career way back in the day. She would always interview different people of all sorts, and then that would sort of create a halo effect on her, because she would talk to so many influential people, she became influential. So if I created a podcast about my industry, I'm going to become influential that way. I may also write a blog or create a YouTube series, or I might just write a bunch of comments on other blogs and build up a name that way. Or if let's say I'm in the healthcare field and I've been in the healthcare field for 10 or 12 years or however long, and I know a lot about my particular aspect of the healthcare field that I focus on, then I can go to a site like this called Help a Reporter Out. And I think it's helpareporterout.net, or it's reporterout.com.
HARO. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. For those who are not aware of it, how that site works is if I'm a reporter and I'm writing a story on healthcare, keep that example going on, then I'm going to say, hey, I'm a reporter and I'm writing a story about healthcare, and about this aspect of healthcare. If you have any insight into this, reach out to me. And so you would get a notification at an email, and then you would reach out to the reporter and say, hey, I have been in healthcare for 10, 12 years. I can answer that question. The reporter says, great. They ask you the question. Hopefully you say something really smart. It gets printed in the paper or a magazine or what have you. Now, if someone were to look at my LinkedIn profile or my About page on my JimStroud.com blog, you'll see how I've been quoted in the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, Global Mail, Wall Street Journal, Black Enterprise, a bunch of other magazines and newspapers, not only because of Help a Reporter Out, but certainly that helped to get my name out there. So if you are being quoted in the newspaper and being quoted in magazines, how much of an advantage does that give you in an interview? So let's say that you're talking to a recruiter and it's down to you and some other guy, right? You can always say, the recruiter can say, well, it's down to you and this other guy, but I see that you've been quoted in magazines and newspapers and other places. So you must be smarter than this other person who wasn't quoted in the media. Doesn't necessarily mean that you are, but it gives that impression. And so since perception is reality, you probably get the job that way. So something to think about. It's about positioning yourself to be found doing things like that, and also keeping abreast of what's going on in your industry, regardless of what demographic you happen to be in.
And in terms of, just about everything has been touched by technology, maybe not by robots yet, but, even making decisions, what you were just bringing up now is how one brands themselves to stand out. But I thought what you brought up earlier and what other people have commented about is the brands of certain companies and the competitors, AKA the haters, right? So if you're at Coke, Pepsi, your competition, and if you do bottling in one place, you can do bottling in another place, and how to seek those out. So in terms of the transferable skills or surviving the future, how do you suggest some of our audience looks for their next positions or to stay relevant and to get comfortable with movement, because often people stay pretty stagnant, right? They don't think about another city, another state, another country. And you were talking about robots who were getting immigrant status. So, what are some of the best ways? You just talked about one about branding yourself, but then looking for those other companies that are like-minded or like yours, the competition, and how do you actually interview for the competition?
That's interesting. Well, a lot in that. Let me unpack one aspect of it. How to interview for the competition. One is that goes back to positioning yourself to be found. I'll give an example of something I did when I was open to opportunities years ago. I love where I'm at now, so throw it out there. I wrote a research paper. It was called "What Sourcing Tool Should You Use?" And I wrote it for the benefit of other recruiters who wanted to know what were the best technology tools to use to find people for the different jobs they're trying to fill. When I wrote that paper, I compared 6 or 7 different tools out there, and I said what I liked and what I didn't like. And when I finished writing it, I posted it on my blog. I shared it with people. I encouraged people to share it with other recruiters. And information sort of floated around, and people initially said, wow, you wrote all this, and this is really interesting. Are you open to opportunities? So then they started pursuing me for roles because they saw my content. Something else that I also did was I did a couple of papers called Resume. It was called the Resume Sourcing Survey. And what I did with that paper was that I did a white paper on which search engines were the most profitable in terms of finding free resumes. So, which puts me on another tangent too. When job seekers are looking for work, one thing that they must do is post your resume on a job board. And I think a lot of people do that and they just wait for the job offer to come in. That should be one of the first things you do, but it's not the only thing you do. Something I want job seekers, everyone listening to my voice, to consider this. If you're looking for a job, you post your job on Monster or Dice or Career Builder or what have you, every recruiter will not see your resume. Those are paid services. So every recruiter does not pay for every job board out there. They pay for certain ones. So if I'm at Company X, we may have a budget for Monster and Career Builder, but not Dice. Or if I'm working at Company Z, we may have a budget for Dice, but not Career Builder and Monster. So putting your resume in a job board is not make it open for every recruiter to find it. Only those recruiters who are paying for it, right? What you want to do is make sure your information is out there for everybody to access for free. One way to do that, of course, is LinkedIn. LinkedIn is free to an extent. They're starting to charge more and more for some of their services, but you can still search LinkedIn a certain way to get a lot of information for free. So I highly encourage you to do that. Something else you can do too is to create a blog, even if you're not a writer, even if you don't keep it up. But if you were to just start a blog using a free service like, say, WordPress.com, and then post your resume on WordPress.com, then other recruiters who can do a Google search a certain way can find your information for free. So you can do that. Also, what you can do too is on your YouTube account, for example, even if you don't post videos, when you join YouTube and other social networks, it'll say what's your name and what's your job title, because people generally identify themselves based on their job title. Put your information there as well, even if you're not uploading videos, just so that Google will have something to look for, and then also check out this site called about.me. That's ABOUT.me. And what about.me is, and actually I'll give you an example. Go to about.me/Jim Stroud and you'll see mine. What about.me is basically is a business card on the web. You'll see somebody's picture and a couple of paragraphs about who they are and what they do, and then links to their YouTube or Facebook or wherever else they're members of. That is very good to do because, one, it gives search engines something to work with. So if I, as a recruiter, am looking for free resumes or free information that I don't have to pay Monster for or Dice for or Career Builder for, I can do a search in Career Builder, and because your information is on that About Me page, I could possibly find it, reach out to you, and call you, or contact you that way. But if you only have your information on job boards, then I'm not going to find you for free. So you're not going to get access to as many opportunities simply because I don't have access to you because I'm not paying for every job board that's out there. All right. So that's one. For two, it helps your personal brand. It helps keep your name out there. So yeah. So really just one. I said two, but really that's the reason to do it. Give Google something to find. Yeah.
Hmm.
So.
Well, Jim, I do want to thank you on behalf of the National Urban League, our audience today, and just myself for you being here. I think everyone now at least knows your name, will be able to find you, and clearly will hopefully see you as a resource. Grab a copy of his book, of your book, and really follow a lot of the advice you give. I mean, you've been in the industry for a while. You not only help job seekers, but you've helped plenty of other recruiters. This is a tough time to make sure that you have all the right tools and equipment for your current and next gig. And nowadays, people are even working longer, so you have to be in it to win it a long way. So thanks again for joining us. I did want to announce that our next DCSS will be held on June 27th, and it's called Beating the ATS. Jim has given us a few tips on how to kind of do that, but it's in preparation for our National Urban League's job fair, career fair, where on this particular topic, we will kind of explore how to beat the application tracking system that often now, as Jim was telling us, some companies have usurped already and use a different technique for you to play some games and understand that you might be applying for a job before you actually apply and before they see your resume, and the resume comes second. So how to get through that ATS system directly to the HR reps. And this will include a discussion on how to do that through LinkedIn, social media, and branding, in addition to looking at a lot of these direct job sites for the companies that you're interested in. So Jim, thanks again. And also, I think you got everyone teed up for the next session. Please follow Jim on LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, no, not Facebook, Twitter, and then his blog, and really take some time to look at the resource that he gave us in the link. Not only will you maybe create your own profile on About Me, but look for the link he gave us earlier today, and we will send that out, which is the bit.ly NUL Jobs 18. There's some additional gems there that he was unable to share with us today during his presentation. But please join us on June 27th. Look forward to hearing from you again, Jim, and seeing you on LinkedIn and live somewhere soon. Got to get my book. So thanks again.
Cool. My pleasure.
Have a great one.
You too. Bye.